This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
Hello, college football fans, and welcome to the Primetime Podcast. My name is Ricky Widmer, and as always, I'm joined by the one, the only, Brandon Swanson.
What's up, what's up?
Ooh, you taking Brandon? This is big, guys. This is big. Brandon has just made his, it's Democratic nomination or convention, whatever day. You just made your endorsement for the WPN, the What's Up Nation. How does it feel?
I like it. The reason really why I used it is because I know and I hope that Sean Anderson will listen to this and tell me to go screw myself. Really, I did it to annoy Sean because that is America's new pastime.
Hey, man, you know what? It's a huge nomination for the What's Up Nation. And like I said on the fast break, I appreciate everybody of the What's Up Nation. But welcome you guys to the Primetime Podcast, the best podcast, I would say, talking some college football.
I would have to say it's certainly the best, but I'm not biased. I'm not.
And today we're continuing our previews through the college football world, going through each of the conferences. You can check out our Pac-12, Big 12, and Big 10. Now we're doing the ACC. And if you are new to how we do the previews, is we're going to look at one side, we're going to look at the other side, and then we're going to give our predictions at the end. And we are actually going to start with the Coastal Conference, or Coastal Division, I should say, in the ACC. We'll hit some of the teams, move over to the Athletic. But the one I want to start with, Brandon, I want to get right into it, is I want to start with the Miami Hurricanes, because they've got a guy in Mark Richt coming over from Georgia. Kirby Smart took his job in Athens, but Rick comes over to a Miami team, to me, could be, I'm going to say, the dark horse in the Coastal Division, because last year they were 8-5, had a 5-3 record. You may be saying, well, Ricky, that's a pretty good record, but they were third in their division. Now with a older quarterback in Brad Kaya, now with Mark Richt coming in, could this team, what should we expect from the Canes in 2016?
Well, I think you have to expect at least better than what we saw last year. And I think with Miami, the time for Al Golden, it was done. Something needed to change, and they bring in Mark Richt, who is a proven winner. And I think that people will certainly miss him in the SEC, or possibly not miss him if you're going against his teams. But I think that he's going to be a welcome breath of fresh air for Miami. And I think that moving forward, this is going to be an even better team. Brad Kaya is a very good quarterback, and I think he's going to be really good leading the offense. And, of course, you have Yerby on the ground. I think that this offense is really set. However, defensively, I think outside of the secondary, you have some question marks. And that's going to be the biggest thing. And you have Mark Richt bringing in Manny Diaz to the defensive side of the football to see what he can do. I think that Diaz is going to have his work cut out for him, though, because if someone looked at Miami's team and they looked at the offense, they looked at the defense, your offense is pretty solid. And like I said, Kaya is a good quarterback. He was either the guy who threw the least amount of interceptions or right up there for least amount of interceptions for the season.
He threw 5 last season.
Exactly.
5.
None. He didn't throw interceptions.
None.
5 equals 0. But I think Miami's defense, and you look at Manny Diaz, who comes over from Mississippi State and then Texas before that, he is definitely looking to bring a good, I think, fresh presence to this defense. And again, they need to get better. I think in the linebacking unit, that has to be better. But they also are looking for some guys to return from injury as well. I think that part of it is bringing in new guys, but at the same time, part of it is getting the same guys who were just injured before. Now you get to see what they can really do.
And you bring up the injuries. I'm going to jump in, and you got to look at Kaya too being injured, because having him back and healthy is going to be huge, because I know he threw for 3,238 yards, had 16 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, like we mentioned last year, but it was kind of a rough year. I mean, he had a huge injury the week that Al Golden, the old Canes coach, was fired, and I think it was a 58-0 loss to the Clemson Tigers. Got a concussion, and it was just a weird season for him. He's back. He's healthy. And one stat I kind of want to throw out here, and I'm getting this from athlonsports.com in their article where they say, here's 14 ACC stats you need to know for this year. Well, the one for the Hurricanes, plus 11 in the turnover margin last year. And you could say that and say, well, Ricky, that means that their defense is pretty good. It's a little bit of the defense, but it's also that they have a quarterback who, one of the most important things a quarterback can do in my mind, take care of the football. If you have a quarterback that takes care of the football, he is going to put you in the prime positions to win games.
Well, that's the number one thing. If you're able to, and we talked about this last week. We talk about this probably almost every week when we're talking about these previews. If you have a quarterback who is smart with the football, who does not turn the football over, that gives you that much more of a chance to win, and that much more of a chance to win the turnover margin and to be plus, because then hopefully your defense is getting the turnovers and your offense isn't throwing it to the other defense. That alone is going to help you win football games. But that is so easy to say, yet so hard to do, it seems like, so many times for so many teams. And it is. It's all about, you said one of the most important things. I think it is the most important thing. If you take care of the football, then, already, you have to look each time. Why'd this team lose? They put up this many points, but they gave up this many points. Well, what did the quarterback do? Oh, he threw 3 interceptions. He put the other team in a good position to win the game or to get points. So the quarterback not throwing the football away and being smart with the football doesn't necessarily mean you have to be conservative. You just got to be smart.
Well, and one of the things I'm going to look at for Miami is their schedule, where we talked on previous previews, Big Ten being one of them that I remember, where strength of schedule comes in. And the big thing for Miami, you win the ACC, of course, then you can talk about going to the college football playoff. But you got a huge opponent potentially in front of you in Clemson that you'll probably be seeing if you make it to that title game. But they've got some tough opponents in conference. They've got Florida State at home. They've got North Carolina at home. The good thing is Florida State, North Carolina, and Pitt, you all get those at home. However, you got to go into Blacksburg to play the Hokies. I want to touch them in a second. They have a new head coach coming in from Memphis in head coach Justin Fuentes. And then you also got to play Notre Dame on the road Halloween weekend. So to me, that's their biggest, I think it's October 8th all the way to November 5th. That's 5 weeks of Florida State, North Carolina, Virginia Tech, Notre Dame, and Pitt.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's a tough schedule. But I think that really at the same time, too, this Miami team with the offense, their offense that they have gives them the opportunity to be able to, I think, go out there and go up against some of the best because they have a good offense. Now, on the defensive side, how does that hold up? Well, we've yet to see it under Mark Richt. But I do think that they're going to get a little healthier. The secondary, like I said, is the spot that I'm liking. It's the linebacking core that the questions are up there, but I think that offensively, Miami could go up against a Clemson, could go up against a Florida State, and they could probably put up some points, and they could probably stick with them. But is that only for a half? Is that for a quarter? I think that that's the thing. Is I'm interested to see how this team reacts. Not reacts, but how they come out and play under their first year of Mark Richt, because the reaction had to be, thank God you're here. Because 5 failed years, really, under Al Golden was not good for them. Now they get this fresh guy, this successful guy who knows what he's doing. He's got a proven track record for success, and who wouldn't want that? And I think that Miami's very happy for that. I think the players will respond well. I think they will have a good season, but I don't think necessarily that it's going to be enough to push them over the edge.
Well, and when we get to North Carolina in a little bit, I'm going to bring back in Miami, because there are some that, I'm calling them a dark horse in the Coastal Division, but I just want to mention the Hokies really quickly, because it's not only because they're my second favorite college football team behind my Fighting Illini, but they have a similar, I'm going to say, what's the word I'm looking for? A similar kind of situation as Miami does, with a new head coach coming in in Justin Fuentes coming over from Memphis. And Memphis was a team, had some success with Paxton Lynch, who's now in the NFL. Fuentes taking the job after the great Frank Beamer retired from Blacksburg, no longer going to be with the Hokies. Is this something that you think, like, okay, this is a 4-4, 7-5 overall team, and Fuentes with his up-tempo offense that he's bringing in going to make them better? Or is this something where it's like, okay, Fuentes is changing around the offense. Yeah, I know the defense is the same with Bud Foster, but they're not going to be a very competitive team in the Coastal in Fuentes' first year.
Well, I think you take a look at their offense, and they've got a couple of quarterbacks in Evans and in Motley who are going to be battling for the job. But I think another thing, too, is Fuentes coming in, and his offensive line returns 4 of the 5 starters from last year. That's huge. I mean, when you are able to have that, you're able
not
to...
under duress.
Not under duress, opens holes for the running back. I think that's going to be really big for them. And Trevon McMillan last year ran for 1,000 yards. First year as their starting running back, he ran for 1,000 yards. He can definitely improve on that, especially since they're keeping the core of the offensive line intact. That alone, I think, spells good things for Fuente in his first season, at least on the offensive side. So that's good for him. But Virginia Tech has never been that team to me. I know you like them a lot, but they've never been that team to me that has sparked me with excitement, that sparked me with, okay, I feel it with this team. I think this team could really be it. They've never sparked me with that. They've always seemed a middle-of-the-pack team that's going to end outside of the top 25 and possibly be maybe a top 30 team, maybe. That's how I possibly see them for this year. But in years past, they've just never jumped off the paper to me. They just haven't done that.
Well, and this year is going to be a very interesting year for the Hokies because I look at last season, and besides the Ohio State game where they lost 42-24, and I mean, you can even throw the Eastern Carolina game in, the point I'm going to make, where they only lost by one score of 7. You've got 35-28 to Eastern Carolina. You've got a 4-point loss to Pitt, a 10-point loss to Miami, a 2-point loss to Duke, and then a 3-point loss to North Carolina. Every single game in conference except for Miami, they only lost by a score. In that Duke game, they went to 4 overtimes, and even against number 17 North Carolina at the time, they went to overtime against that team 2 weeks before that team went to play Clemson in the ACC title game. Here's the thing with Virginia Tech is those close games indicators of what kind of a team they have, or are we looking at that and going, well, that was just the team saying, fuck it, this is Frank Beamer's last year, we're going out there and trying to win it for the Gipper? And there's a part of me that says, I look at those close games, and there's a part of me that goes, a lot of the emotion of Frank Beamer's last year is in those close games, and Justin Fuentes is going to have to try to pull that emotion back into this for those to be closer games or wins.
I think that to your point of the close games, I think this past year was probably a little bit of both. They want to go out there and win it for their coach, but I think at the same time they're probably just coming up short, and it's because they've got some pieces in place. But how many times have we seen teams that always are the team that come up just short? They're good enough, to get to this point, but they're just coming up short. And that, a lot of times we talk about, oh, they were good enough to get to this game, but they weren't able to win it. They're good enough to get to a point in a game, but then no longer are they able to, they're not able to go over the hump and be that team, that fighter that really goes out there and puts the knife in the stomach, twists it, turns it, kicks them over, and they're dead. They don't do that to the other team. They're usually the team that happens to. So what is it that they have to do? And I think it's on the defensive side for Virginia Tech, especially this year. They were season highs in almost everything last year on defense. I mean, it was not good. 26.3 points allowed per game. 369.8 yards allowed per game, 180.7 yards on the ground per game. Those were all highs in Bud Foster's 20 years.
Can I throw out a positive stat?
Those were the worst. But let me tell you, that's only going to get better. It has to. And with that getting better, with the offense staying consistent, I think that what that does is that hopefully pushes Virginia Tech over that hump and gets them to win some of those games.
And I'm going to throw out on the other side, of course, those were all bad highs for this defense. However, 33.5%, that's the third down conversion rate for Virginia Tech opponents in 2015. So there were some good things that defense was doing, and that's, to me, one of the most important things is that Bud Foster stayed as defensive coordinator, even with a new coach like Fuentes coming over. But I want to move on to a team in this Coastal Division that has a coach that is entering his second year with the team, and that's Pat Narduzzi, who came over from Michigan State last year. In his first year, not that bad with the Panthers. 8-5, 6-2, had to come over when Christ went over from the Pitt Panthers to the Wisconsin Badgers. I believe that's when Greg Bielema left the Panthers to go to the Arkansas Razorbacks. But this is the team last year that finished second in the Coastal at 6-2, 8-5 overall. Brandon, I'm going to throw this at you. Could we see Pitt fall out of that second spot? Are they going to be the team where it's like, yeah, they may not compete with the Tar Heels, and there may be a team like a Duke, a Virginia Tech, a Miami that overtakes their spot for number 2 and is a greater challenge to the Tar Heels?
No, I'll tell you what, I think Pitt could surprise us this year. I think Pitt could surprise us this year and not necessarily say win the conference, but I think that definitely they could be a team that people don't want to necessarily mess with. How about these two names? James Conner coming back, hopefully, after enduring MCL surgery in the offseason and chemotherapy treatments for Hodgkin's lymphoma. And he's trying to make a comeback. Over 1,700 yards and 26 touchdowns in 2014. ACC Player of the Year honors. Can he come back this year? If he comes back this year, I think that's huge. And here's a quote from Coach Pat Narduzzi. Quote, "I know this. James is an inspiration to all of us. He makes us better every day." End quote. When you have a guy like that who's an inspiration in your locker room, we talked about it with Virginia Tech. You talk about wanting to go out there and win it for somebody. His players want to go out there and win it for him. You know, I think that that's huge. I mean, when you have something, it's like an extra added incentive to want to go out there and, you know, this guy's gone through this, and this. We'll go through hell every day in the trenches, every day out here to win this game for him. Not only ourselves, but for him too. So I think that's huge, and I think that's one thing that could really push Pitt over the edge in a good way.
Well, and I'm looking at an article here on ESPN where the title basically says James Conner to be full participant when Pitt practices open, and basically he's good to go. Apparently that's what the team is saying. He's going to be good to go to be a full participant. However, to kind of piggyback off of the quote that you said from Coach Narduzzi, he also said, and I quote, "We have to slow him down. He won't slow himself down. We just need to monitor him a little bit, make sure we don't wear him out. We have to be smart. You let him go out there for 2 a day, but you don't have him run every snap." End quote.
I think that's huge. I think that's absolutely huge, and that's one thing. Again, I think that Connor's going to be the X factor. I think he is the X factor in this one. How does he come out and play, and how does that make the team better? Because he will only make the team better if he is playing each game, if he is given the opportunity to go at full speed or close to it each game. He's the X factor. Now, the Y factor is Nathan Peterman, and he is their Tennessee transfer who came over after week 3, and I think that this guy is going to be huge because he was third in touchdown passes with 20. He threw just 1 interception. Now, can he be as good as he was after week 3 last year? We will see. He loses Tyler Boyd. That was a big loss to the NFL draft. But I think that Peterman can still be good. I think that he paired with Conner at their top level, this team could be very good.
And here's the thing I'm focusing on with Pitt. It's got to be the schedule. Because game number 1, you see Villanova, and you're thinking, oh, that's a good opponent. This is football, not basketball. Villanova's an FCS team. You shouldn't be scheduling FCS teams when you're in a Power 5. But after that, you've got James Franklin's Penn State Nittany Lions coming to your house at home. Guess what? James Franklin's he's going to try to light a fire under his guys' asses this season because he may be on the hot seat. Then you get Mike Gundy and his Cowboys from Oklahoma State. Oh, guess what? That's in Stillwater. And then, oh, wait, when you thought that wasn't enough, you're going to be going into North Carolina to play the Tar Heels to open up your ACC schedule. Those 3 games right there may determine, the North Carolina game may determine already if they're going to win the division, and those 2 before it may determine if they'll even be a playoff team if they win the ACC. That to me is, Pitt's got a tough, but I'm going to commend them with scheduling Penn State, with scheduling Oklahoma State. That's what you want to see from a team. You want to see teams schedule the hard opponents, not go through a cupcake schedule.
It's going to be hard to repeat a 6-1 start from last year and a 5-1 road record, but I still think that the Panthers can be good. Yes, you mentioned some good teams. I think that they'll be tough. Penn State, I think that Pitt will beat them. But I think
it's going to be tough, though. It could be tough.
Yeah,
they'll probably win.
You think everyone in the Big Ten is good?
Except for Rutgers.
Purdue?
No,
really?
not a chance.
Really?
They're good.
All right, that was you're really nice. But I think Oklahoma State is the team that I look at and I go, okay, if they can beat an Oklahoma State, a team, Big 12 team that can put up points. Every Big 12 team is known for putting up points, except for the ones that don't. And I think that that's going to be a really good game for Pitt. But again, I'm telling you, look for Pitt to surprise. They were an 8-5 last year. I think if they get the same production, if not better, out of this offense, and they stay consistent with that, they could be possibly the number 2 team in the Coastal. They could definitely be a 9-4, maybe even 10-3 team. Who knows? But I think that Pitt definitely has a lot of upside, especially going into this season.
To me, there are 7 games on this schedule that come in a group of 3 and a group of 2, or a group of 3 and a group of 4, if my math is serving me correctly.
It is the second time. Yeah.
Is going to be key. That first one we talked about, the Penn State, the Oklahoma State, and then the North Carolina. That's number 1. Then you kind of get Marshall, you get Georgia Tech, you get Virginia. Okay, win, win, win. Then it starts that group of 4. You get Virginia Tech at home on ESPN. That means they think it's going to be a good game if it's on ESPN. Then you get Miami on the road. Then you get the team that most people are predicting to win the whole shebang in Clemson in Death Valley. I think that's what they call it, Death Valley. I think it's the same name as LSU. And then you get Duke at home. That's your group of 4. I'm going to include Duke in there just because, they were good 2 years ago. They were mediocre at 4-4 last year in the ACC. But you have those 7 games, and out of the 7, 5 of them being conference games that are going to make or break your season for Pitt.
Yeah.
And you got to play Clemson. I don't even think North Carolina has to play Clemson this year.
Yeah, I think that, again, it's a tough schedule, but that's what you want to see. That's what you want to see from a team that, especially someone like me who's possibly overvaluing them right now, or what they could be, and possibly overhyping. You want to see them, this team, play the tough teams, win the tough games on the road, and then you can say, yeah, look at what they've done. Look at who they've played. And if they end up being 9-4 or going 8-5 again, yeah, you'd like them to be a little bit better than 8-5 if you're Narduzzi, but you look and you go, look at the teams I put them against. I didn't put them against cupcakes. I put them against good teams. That's what fans want to see, really, when it comes down to it. It's not fun to beat University of Nowheresville. It's fun to beat that Oklahoma State, you were not predicted to beat them. Or it's fun to beat, maybe knock off a Clemson. Not that you will. Someone will say, Pittsburgh, Clemson, you will not win that game. But if you do, the feeling of that is so much better than beating like Grand Valley State or somebody, you know?
What was the team last week in the Big Ten we talked about where all I can remember is that they play, like, Rockford College is on their schedule. It was Northwestern has them on the schedule. Something like, they're from Jacksonville, Illinois. I like how I remember all these weird facts about them, but I don't remember the exact team for Northwestern. It's like that. Like, why the fuck are you playing this team that's not even an FCS? But I'm going to use that to go right into the Tar Heels. And I'm looking at their schedule. Georgia off the bat. Illinois off the bat on the road. That's because they had an agreement to play us 2 years. Then you also get the majority of your schedule. They don't have to play Clemson. Besides Georgia, I mean, Illinois, okay. At least you're scheduling a team from a Power 5. But then your other non-conferences are James Madison, which is and then the Citadel. The Citadel is usually a team that you get in the, Hawaii 5 tournament in basketball, and you got to play them one game because we're doing all the preseason tournaments before conference play starts. But you look at it, they got Pitt to start their ACC. They go right on the road the next week to play Florida State. To me, that's the stretch. September 24th to October 15th. Pitt at home, Florida State on the road, Virginia Tech at home, Miami on the road. There you go. That's the big 4-game cushion that they have to win, and it's going to be the tough part of their schedule for the Tar Heels.
Again, the Tar Heels, a team that you look at, and as we did with Pitt, and you said, okay, it's going to be a pretty difficult schedule. There's a lot of meat there in that schedule. You know, you don't have too many cupcakes. It's just a whole lot of ribs. But I think that, again,
you got some cupcakes in this one. Pitt has a way harder schedule than North Carolina.
You've got to look at North Carolina's team and the pieces that they've got, and they're good. Again, they returned 4 of their 5 starters on the offensive line. So not only do they do that, but then they also continue to have Elijah Hood and TJ Logan as a 1-2 punch on the ground. I think that you take a look, and no more Marquise Williams at quarterback. You have Mitch Trubisky, but I think that they look at Trubisky as a guy who's still a capable runner. He can, he can throw the ball. He'll be fine. But I think that they're going to definitely be leaning on that ground game this season.
And because you mentioned the 5 returning starters on the offensive line, this stat, and I'm pulling out stats here, and you're probably like, well, Ricky, you can pull out any stats to make things sound good. But the key stat coming in because of that fact, 16 sacks allowed by North Carolina last season. One of the fewest among teams last year. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And then it doesn't matter that you have a new quarterback coming in, because if you give him that solid of an offensive line, it kind of takes the pressure off him. Like, okay, I don't have to worry about evading pressure because I've got 5 guys in front of me that are going to do the work. The hog mollies, as I like to call them. They're going to do the work to make sure that I'm protected.
Yeah, I think that last season, North Carolina was one of the most improved defenses in the ACC, but probably overall. But one thing that you have to take a look at is their defensive line, and they allowed 424 rushing yards per game and 6.6 yards per carry in the final 3 games last season. That's not good. That is not good at all. And people looked at that final game that North Carolina played, and it was against Clemson.
Should have beat Clemson.
And it was against Clemson.
Should have beat them.
But, yes, people will continue to say the referees screwed them. The referees screwed up. That's for certain.
Oh, you could have made plays earlier in the game to win that game.
You could have made plays on offense, but you could have also held Clemson defensively. That's the thing that they couldn't do. And that's the reason why it ultimately came back, bit them in the butt, and they did not win. They didn't do enough early, and they could not close it out late. So that was the problem there. But if they get better on the defensive line, those 424 rushing yards per game allowed, that's got to come way down. I mean, even if you say 200 rushing yards per game, that is a lot better than 424. So I think they definitely can do better there. Secondary, solid. They have 3 key returners coming back. Cornerback MJ Stewart, Des Lawrence. They finished in the top 5 in ACC in passes defended last season. That's what you want to see, your guy going up there and fighting for it with the offensive. with the offensive player. And I think that overall, North Carolina, I like this team. I think this team is going to definitely make a run for best team in the ACC. Will they get it? Maybe, maybe not. But I think that they certainly are one of the top three.